went to stand up and like I don't remember much. I just wiped out. Hi everybody and welcome back. Today we wanted to share something that's more personal, and this is just hard for both of us because I feel like both of us are very private people. So to talk about personal things is just harder for us, like to open up, especially when it's like, you know, to someone like y'all when, you know, we don't really know everyone personally, to open up and share details about our life that are things that were really hard for us to do is just different. So that being said, just bear with us a little bit because this is difficult for us to share. Today we wanted to talk about basically all of my health story, and I don't know, I guess we'll start at the beginning and share like what happened and how we got to where we are now.
So 2019 I still consider to be the worst year of my life. I don't know, like so many emotions, so many things to work through. Like now that we're in 2020, I'm like, holy cow, anything to not go back to 2019. So even sharing about it is hard for me. You want to talk?
I'm sorry, Jenny. It was just a very unexpected time and a very uncertain time, and it made it really difficult not knowing the future and, you know, being faced with such a huge obstacle and not knowing what to expect. So January of 2019, one day, a day just like any other, I was driving home from running errands with the girls, and I just felt like my heart was racing, and it didn't stop. It just felt like it kept racing like faster and faster. Like obviously I'm like freaking out. I'm driving. I pull over on the side of the road and I felt like I was gonna black out. I called John and I'm like panicking, like what do I do? My heart is like racing. I was not wearing my Apple Watch, which has a heart monitor in it, but I had it in the car, so I put it on and my heart rate said it was at 210. I literally felt like I was gonna die, like in that moment. I was like, I don't know what's happening. My heart was like racing extremely fast, and then all of a sudden it just would drop to like, you know, 40s, and I couldn't like function. I laid my seat back and I was like, I'm gonna pass out. So he drove and picked me up.
Well, I was on a job, like I was working, I was in somebody's house with a couple of other guys that work with us, and Alyssa called me. And if you know anything about Alyssa, she's unbelievably tough. I mean, I watched her deliver 3 children, and when she called me, she said, I can't breathe and I feel like I'm gonna pass out. My heart is beating out of my chest. I left every tool. It was like the rapture happened of John. I was like, I just yelled to one of the guys, I have to go. And I ran to my van and drove as fast as I could. I was scared to death.
John like picked me up and drove me home. And by the time I got home, my heart had somewhat like normalized. It was like more of like a normal range, like kind of high, but you know, not crazy. So I laid down and I really just thought like this is a freak incident, and you know, it's the only time in my life it's ever happened. I've never had any issues. I really just thought that was gonna be it. Like I was gonna rest, it was gonna be fine.
Yeah, because by the time I got there, like her heart had calmed down and things had gone back to normal. She felt super tired afterwards, so we really didn't know what it was. And when you go to the hospital after something happens, if you've ever been, they're just like, oh, we'll run some tests, and then they send you home and they don't know anything. That's what they always do. It's what they've always done before. So it's like, do we go? Do we sit there? Like, so I just really felt like we should just go home and her lay down, and I stayed home to see like how she was and kind of monitor it, and it all kind of went away for a while.
Yeah, like I thought that, like I'm that person that I don't want to go to the hospital or go to see a doctor unless I know for definite something's wrong with me. I've always been like that. I just hate being the person that's like, you know, I'm sick or I'm whatever, and the doctors say you're fine, and I'm like, see, like I was a baby or whatever. So I just felt like, I mean, we talked about it, and I was like, I don't feel like the doctor's going to do anything if we go to the hospital. So I laid down, and that day it seemed to be somewhat normal. The next day I woke up and it was like the same thing. My heart was racing, and then it felt like it stopped beating. And I was just like, I mean, I was so terrified, honestly, like so terrified, because it just felt like, what if my heart stops beating? I mean, what do you do? So we ended up going to the hospital, like to the emergency room.
The second time it happened, we went to the hospital.
We went to the emergency room. They did a bunch of testing. Like John's mom was so kind. She watched the kids for us. And they did a bunch of tests. You know, they did an EKG. They did all of these things, and they just said, since like you got here and it's not happening right now, and it's sporadic when it's happening, we can't actually pinpoint it, so we can't really diagnose you. Like, we just think that you have a problem that has to do with your heart, so we're going to refer you to a cardiologist, but we don't really know what's wrong with you. Like, you're young and this shouldn't be happening at the age that you are.
It's the worst kind of news, I feel like, because it's not like, okay, we have a problem, let's see what we can do, let's find a doctor that can help us with this problem. It's like, well, we don't know why your heart is racing and beating out of your chest, and then it all of a sudden stops and goes to a rhythm as if you were sleeping, and you feel like you're going to pass out. We have no idea why. For me, I'm like, okay, that's like terrible, because we don't know how to combat the problem. We don't know what to do. So we went to the cardiologist.
Well, that was one of the most scary things is, like, I'm feeling this way thinking every day, like, I can't believe I woke up again. Like, I really thought that I was going to, you know, fall asleep, and then my heart just stopped beating because it was so, like, fast and so slow, and it just felt like, you know, it was going to stop at any point. So I called the cardiologist, and, you know, they have a huge wait list, and since the hospital couldn't really give us any definite answers, there was like a 2-week wait to even get an appointment with my cardiologist. And that was like a terrifying 2 weeks to wait, and every day, like I mean, he had to go back to work, and I would just go and sit at my mother-in-law's house because I was frightened to be at home by myself in case something happened. And, you know, I have 3 kids that were like, I mean, Zoe was a year younger, so she was only a year old at the time. And, like, I was so physically exhausted every time my heart would race. It felt like I'd run a marathon. And I would just, you know, I would be laying in bed or laying on the couch all day. I had little to no energy at all. I mean, I stopped drinking caffeine, you know, I was like trying to eat better, all of these things, and nothing helped. It just seemed to get worse and worse every day.
Yeah, so we were just kind of at a loss of what to do, except just, I mean, we waited until the cardiologist was available, and then when we finally went to see him, they did like an EKG and all the same, not all the same tests, but basically the same tests the hospital did.
They did send me home with a heart monitor to see like what was happening. I don't remember if that was the first or the second visit, but I think they sent me home with the first visit with a monitor. And it was like a 72-hour monitor that you leave hooked up to you for that amount of time.
Yeah.
You don't ever take it off. And then it sends all of the readings, it records them. And they can look over it, like whenever I went back to see them.
Yeah, when you went back, he like read, I don't know, prints out this paper of all the stuff and he can see what it did.
It prints out like 90 pages.
I know, I was like, how do you even like pick out one little thing? So he would ask us like, okay, well, this was racing at this time. Were you sitting? What were you doing? So to try to think back, you know, a day or so before, it was like at 10:30 a.m., what were you doing? Like, I don't know, like sitting, standing, walking, I don't know. So it was just a challenge to try to actually figure out what exactly it was. And he couldn't really figure it out, but he had an idea. He thought maybe it was the tachycardia.
He found one spot on my reading. This is like the second or third visit to my cardiologist, because the first visit he sent me home with a monitor, and then I ended up going back and he did an echo, which is like an ultrasound of your heart, and I guess it can see if there's any blockage or anything like that that may be causing like this crazy, like insane, like heart rhythm. And that came back. I went back the next week to see what that reading was, and that looked fine. He said that had no problem. But then when he looked over my scans, or I guess recordings from the 72-hour monitor, he found like one spot that he thought really looked like tachycardia. And he said that's something that has to be referred out to an electrophysiologist, because a cardiologist works with, it's so confusing because there's so many things that I learned that I had no idea about.
And there's so many big words. I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
So many specialists for so many different things. So the cardiologist said basically there's nothing I can do. Like, he had tried giving me some medications to try to control it. Nothing worked. My problem was just intensifying. I would get crazy dizzy spells like every day. I would get dizzy spells multiple times a day, and I would like almost black out. I mean, one time, like, you had to like pick me up and like take me to bed and like lay me in bed because I couldn't like move. And it was scary. And the more doctors I went to, the more it just seemed like no one knew. They would say, try this, you know, try this medication. It has side effects, that doesn't work. So I got referred to an electrophysiologist, which again was like 2 or 3 week wait to see them. So now I believe when I actually finally saw my electrophysiologist, it was like March.
Yeah. And he finally, he sent you home with a monitor as well. They came back and he said, I don't see anything on here that would cause what's happening to you.
Well, he sent me home he looked over my cardiologist's reading. Well, first of all, I guess I should say,
it's hard to remember back that
yeah,
far,
I know.
like, the exact like play-by-play of what happened. Like,
well, the first thing is, I want to say thank you, especially to my second cousin, Sarah. She truly was a godsend in this situation. You know, we had no idea what we were doing. We'd never experienced anything like this. No one in my family has heart issues. And I have a second cousin who is in this field, and she called me and talked to me for several hours. And she was like, this seems to be what the problem is. I want to look, and I want to find you someone that lives around you by referral, and see if I can find someone who is going to treat you and do what I think needs to be done, that's going to stick with you throughout the entire process and not just experiment or refer you to someone else. So she was like an answer to prayer. I mean, we had prayed for answers, prayed for someone to give us some sort of direction, and she was that for us.
She really was. I mean, because we got recommended to the electrophysiologist, and he wanted, like, immediately, like, we're going to do this procedure, and right away, like, before he even looked at anything.
He did, yeah, my scans had not been faxed over. from my
He was ready to
cardiologist.
go to the surgery room and go.
He
I'm like,
wanted to do surgery, and like both of us just felt. I mean, we were like, you haven't even read my results or my scans or anything, and we just felt a little uncomfortable. And for my cousin to refer me to someone that was.
It was really an answer to our prayer. We were praying like that we would find the right doctor, we'd find the right person. If we needed to do a procedure, that it would be who God wanted us to have. And for her to call and recommend this guy, it was like all this stress that we had and pressure of like, what do we do? We have no idea. We don't know anybody that's had this problem or anything. And then she recommended this person. It was just like a sigh of relief, like, like finally, like we can trust this person because we know them. They're in this field. It was really an answer to prayer that she was able to do that for us.
It truly was, and we're so grateful for it, and I don't feel like we could ever repay her enough. And also to my doctor, Dr. Trividi, he was amazing. I mean, the first time that we met with him, both of us left and were like, he's so knowledgeable. He knows what he's talking about. He had a plan for what he wanted to do. He sent me home with a monitor, wanted to find more definite on paper result that I had what he thought I had, which was possibly tachycardia. We went, several times to visit. We tried different medications over several weeks. Nothing seemed to work. Like he said, I want to experiment to try other medications before I do something like a surgery, because a surgery is a big deal. I mean, it is something that you're going to the hospital for, you're getting put under for. And he was like, I don't want to do that if there's an easier way to fix it by maybe putting you on a medication or something that can control this if it is tachycardia. And at this point, he felt like there was no proof on paper that that was actually what it was. It was just me saying I had these symptoms and, him hearing it, but there was nothing to back up that that was the case, because when he looked over my cardiologist's readings, he didn't feel like it was tachycardia when he read over them. So April, I guess the end of March, we had exhausted pretty much all of the options that he had, like all of his plans. We tried them.
The non-surgery options.
Nothing worked. I was still having these dizzy spells daily. My heart was racing. I was like an emotional wreck. I really was.
January, right? It's when you first...
Yeah, I first started having problems in January.
And then this is April. So all these months of just off and on, feeling like you're going to pass out, feeling like, okay, can my heart handle accelerating to this high amount and then just dropping immediately. I had to... Was that when Madison came?
No, that was later.
The second time.
Like, John had to take off several days of work, depending how I felt. I would call different family members, like who lived local, like my mother-in-law, and I would like sit at her house, or I would ask like my niece to come over and to stay for the day or whatever, because when it was really bad, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't take care of the kids. I couldn't function, and I was scared to be home alone. So it was like everyone was on hold, because there were so many people that were like trying to help and be there if I needed them, and I needed like more help than I've ever needed in my life. I've never had to, really ask for help from people like that. So anyway, my doctor, he scheduled me for a surgery, which was an ablation, to go in and to see if I had tachycardia. At this point, he had no idea what I had. He thought that I might have tachycardia based on the symptoms of what I was saying, but he didn't know for definite. There was no proof that that was what I had. He had given me a 30-day monitor that for 30 days recorded my readings, and I would press the button anytime I felt a symptom and would log it. The problem was, every time I would press the button and would log the symptom, by the time it logged the symptom, I know this after the surgery, by the time I would log the symptom that I was having, like shortness of breath or dizziness or whatever it was, it would record once I pressed that button. But by the time it would do that, this arrhythmia worked so sporadically that it was gone by the time it recorded it. So he found no readings that I had tachycardia. A lot of people asked us why we didn't share on our social media or ask for prayer. When our first surgery came, I only posted about it after the fact. And a lot of it was due to this. Like the day that we went to the hospital to have the surgery, the doctor came in our room and he said, I'm going to do this surgery, but I want to go ahead and prepare you that it's probably going to be negative, meaning that you don't have any problems or we can't find the problem, but it's not tachycardia. He's like, there's no proof that this is what it is. I'm doing this surgery because I believe what you're saying, that you are feeling these things, and the only way to know is by doing the surgery, but I want to prepare you that it's probably going to be negative. So, I mean, we're like praying that hopefully this answers questions. I mean, we have so many questions, no answers. We were praying that this would be like the surgery that would like show what the problem was and we could get it fixed.
We just didn't know, like we didn't know anything. I mean, this whole process has been nothing but learning. We're basically getting electrophysiologist education in 4 months. I mean, it's crazy. We had to make an educated decision on something you know so little about is so tough. I mean, should we just keep going the medicine route? Should we even get this procedure? So we finally decided, I mean, that it's got to be the procedure. He's got to do this surgery to figure out what exactly it is and where it's coming from. So we set up the appointment, got it all ready. We showed up super early, I remember.
Yeah, it was like
Didn't
5. We had to
sleep.
be at the hospital like 5:30 in the morning. He wanted me to be the first surgery of the day, which is a good thing I was.
Didn't sleep hardly at all.
Yeah, I mean, all night, so nervous. I could not sleep. I just, I was awake. I was extremely nervous. I've never actually, like really had to go to the hospital for anything. One time when I was younger, I had an allergic reaction to something, but other than that, I'd never been to the hospital. I had all my children in a birth center with, no pain medication. I'd never had to have a needle. I've never had to be in a hospital. So when all of this happened, it's like I was in and out of doctor's offices all the time. I've been to the hospital multiple times, and it was very hard to do and to comprehend when you've never done that and you've never had to be at the hospital for anything. Anyway, so the first day we got there 5:30 in the morning. Some doctors, when they do this particular surgery, they sedate you, but then they bring you out of sedation into a light sedation, and you can talk to them and interact. You just don't remember it because you're on a lot of medication. My doctor wanted it to be completely sedated, and however they do the surgery, I know that the short details, but it's a lot of work. Basically, they go in in both thighs and in the neck, and they use these they call them these little catheters that have these wired little tips that are a 3D map. Basically, they have this map that maps where they're going, and it goes to your heart, and they can see where these lesions or little spots are that need to be ablated. Kind of is how it works.
So it's basically an extra wire in your heart. So you have your fast rhythm and your slow rhythm, and it sends messages to your heart telling it how fast to be. If you're running, it's obviously going to tell it to be faster or slower if you're sitting. Well, hers had an extra wire that was basically, around. It took a different route to the heart, so it was sending messages in between. So it was trying to send a slow message or a fast message, but then this other wire was just sending random messages. So go really fast, so the heart would speed up really fast and then just drop because the messages would stop. And then so at random times it would just send down that other pathway. So that's basically what it is he takes those things and he either burns or freezes them. I mean,
Yeah, like they can see these different, like he gave us a map afterwards and you can see these different spots. Most people, like they have their heart, and then around usually the side they usually go to, there would be like 1 or 2 little dots on their map that they would show us that have like these spots that need to be ablated. On mine, after my surgery, I was completely out. I had no idea what happened. But he came and talked to John, and
there's a lot that happened between then and when he came to talk. I was like a wreck. Like we got to, like they push you up, take you through the elevator, and then they go past the waiting room, and they're going to take Alyssa down this long hallway. Seemed like the tunnel to nowhere. It's like the longest hallway you've ever seen. And they take Alyssa, they're like, okay, you have to wait here, telling me this, so I have to wait here. And then watch your wife go down this long hallway to surgery is terrible. You feel like completely helpless. I mean, of course, I just go in the bathroom and cry for like a minute. I hated it.